Welcome to Soccer Saturday with me, Geordie Pete Redding. It's been quite a week of football. Chelsea are being sold. City are signing Haaland. And me and Super Kev are on the move. Kev, have you packed yet? Okay, coming up on today's show, we preview a monumental clash of North versus South with two of the league's biggest strugglers so far. That's Leeds and Norwich, for your information, not Man United and Tottenham. We look at what's happened to Marcus Rashford. We're going to be featuring Manager of the Month. We're going to find out what's new with our big pal Adrian Bevington. And still, we've got time for Baller of the Week and a bit of DK Hot Sauce predictions. But first, it's a public service announcement that we are moving, Kev. It's the start of a new era, and a massive thank you to James and the team at V-Circle because we are literally going Hollywood Balls Live. The new platform is going to be Hollywood Balls Live, so we need, Kev, everyone to join us, don't we?
Yeah, we're moving out, everyone. We're moving out, and we want you to move with us. So you're coming across. So any link that you need to click on it and join us, please.
Absolutely, we're looking forward to it. So as of next Saturday, we'll be moved in and all ready for business. But it's very exciting. We'll more as we go. But always, it's today's show, and Saturday is the focus with a ton of stuff to get through. Welcome, Adrian Bevington, the busiest man on social media. Great to have you with us again. How have you been?
Great to be back, guys. I was a bit nervous with the countdown music that was coming on there. I thought I was going to talk about bigger issues going on in the world at the moment, so it's a delight to be here to talk about football.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. It's one of those things, isn't it? When news items wise, Adrian, you know, we know that the way the world is at the moment, and of course, it's affecting everything, including football. And it's not something that we can shy away from, but it's just something that hopefully our show will give people a little respite as well, with a little bit of fun of the football world, which is why I wanted to ask you, the most photographed man in the Northeast currently, since we caught up, and because I follow you obviously on social media, but just give us a little idea of what you've been up to, because it's been such a busy period for you.
Yeah, well, obviously things slowed down a bit during COVID in the first part of it, but over the last year or so, I've been working primarily for a North American investment fund, which I'm still involved on a day-to-day basis with. But I've got a broader portfolio than that, which includes something that's given me a great deal of pleasure during that period, which is local club in the Northeast, Hartlepool United, that I joined the board of early part of this season. And I must say, it's been, such an enjoyable experience during that time. The club's just come back into the Football League. We've had a really good season on and off the pitch. Crowds are absolutely flying. We've got an average crowd of over 5,000. We reached the fourth round of the FA Cup with a great weekend at Crystal Palace, who were incredible hosts, I must say. And then we took 5,000 fans there as well. And then unfortunately, in midweek, we got knocked out the semi-final of the Papa John's Trophy to Rotherham United, who were obviously top of League One. But again, 7,500 there at Hartlepool at the Suit Direct. And it's just, there's a whole load of positivity about it. And I've worked at various levels of the game, and I've never worked at League Two before. But there's such a real honesty about it, and there's so much you can do. And the fans have been spectacular, so it's been a real joy. We've got Leyton Orient this afternoon, where I'll be heading off to shortly.
Brilliant stuff, Kev. It's a great story, isn't it?
Oh, Kev, come on!
Hey, it's one of my old teams.
They did us 5-0 back in the autumn and our manager left after that game and moved to Stockport, Dave Challoner. So it created a right old load of upheaval. So we owe them one today.
Yeah, you know what? I follow them, Pete, and Orient aren't doing so great at the moment. So I fancy Hartlepool to get a right result today.
Oh, don't tempt fate, mate.
Okay, listen, staying in the northeast, want to say our friends at South Shields as well are going along really well. They've got another important game today. Glenn Stidolf, I wanted to congratulate him personally on the show, who's gone home, by the way, to be a part of the South Shields revolution. The boy has gone home, the big story in the northeast this week. So we wish him well as executive director of South Shields FC. Glenn's joined us. He's watching today. So good luck to all the Northeast teams as well. Okay, Kev, it's been a monumental week of football, as I said, on and off the pitch, which ultimately does affect it. I mean, let's start with, you can't ignore it, but Chelsea, my gosh, it's been hectic to say the least there, hasn't it?
Pete, it has. But one thing I will say is the same whirlwind that Abramovich came in with. Remember, he came in and just everything changed. Is the same road that everything's turned into ruin. Obviously, it's not something you could plan for. He's been an incredible owner of Chelsea Football Club in what he's invested. But obviously, what's going on in the world, big picture-wise, obviously the sanctions have hamstrung Chelsea. And it's going to be an incredible fall from grace, Pete. I mean, where the bank's been suspended. So I'm not too sure. Maybe Adrian could help and explain a little bit how really the implications of that. I mean, they can't sign anybody to new contracts. They can't sign anybody, Pete. They can't, other than the next few games, they can't sell tickets. They can't sell merchandise from the club shop. It's a catastrophe, and it's one that they might not recover for, Pete. I'm telling you, they might not recover from it.
Adrian, it's a good point Kev makes with your hat on of being, at that level in football. It's something that's completely unique, but they can't look from one day to the next currently.
I think the key for this is, and look, Kev, you've articulated so much of it well there. I think the key now is the meetings that were taking place last few days between Chelsea and the government and probably the Premier League as well about how, where they stand with the sale of the club. Obviously, the assets have been frozen and we keep reading about the bank accounts, etc. But the most important thing beyond the political situation that's going on here, and we all got to look at that all the time, accepted. But if you're a Chelsea fan or a football fan in England, you don't want to see any football club fall into a difficult situation financially and where that might take us. So I hope that the situation can be found, which I believe is the case now, where there'll be a sort of a period where there's many buyers have expressed interest to Rain Capital, I believe it is, who are selling the club on behalf of Roman Abramovich. One of these buyers hopefully will buy it. It's not about funding going back to Roman Abramovich, but it's protecting the longevity of Chelsea Football Club for the heritage and history that brings. If that buyer can be found over the next month or whatever, hopefully that will see a pathway out of it, because I don't see the benefit of a club going to the wall, in effect, to penalise the fans of the club when it's actually aimed at a political play with what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and Putin and Abramovich here. There's got to be a way, even where if there's a subsidiary company created, Exco, that any funding that comes in and out of that isn't going back to Roman Abramovich, but it's just allowing the club to operate over the period between now and the sale that protects the club. That will work for everybody as well. At least it can be checked. And that's kind of government UK PLC running it on behalf of the club. There's still a lot of good people working at Chelsea, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And there's a lot of people who work at Chelsea who are not all earning millions of pounds. There's a lot of people who, go to work every day, as they do at every football club, and Absolutely. Their livelihood and their families depend on that. So while there's a little bit of mirth and glee around at the moment about, the oligarchs are losing all their money and so forth, the impact on a lot of genuine people who work at that football club shouldn't be underestimated. So we have to try and find a way in which a solution can be achieved here.
100%. Well said as well. Okay, who else is in the house? Paul Jerry's in the house. He had a night out with Barry Ashworth in Newcastle last night. God, I can only imagine how that went. Kev, he was, as we when Barry was last on the show, he said he was playing in Newcastle at the weekend, one weekend. That weekend was this weekend. Friday night, Paul Jerry was there. So I hope you enjoyed it. I can tell by the photographs that you did, but we are a family show, so we won't be sharing them. Kev, there is action on the pitch, believe it or not, this weekend. Pivotal games everywhere at the bottom because we're turning our attention to the business end of the season, and it's looking tight at both ends. I wanted to start at the top because the early game kicks us off. Brighton against Liverpool, quite an intriguing game because from what I've seen of Brighton in the last couple of weeks, they like to play as well. So it's a tricky fixture for Liverpool, isn't it?
It is, Pete, and if you remember rightly, earlier on in the season, Liverpool at Anfield raced ahead 2-0.
Yeah.
And second half, Brighton adjusted, and that's when Brighton were really going well. They pegged it back to 2-2. They came away from Anfield with a draw and were well worthy of a draw. They really attacked Liverpool. One thing this Brighton side can do, Pete, they can play some football. They can play. The big problem with Brighton is they're not as clinical as they could be. They're going to need to be clinical to get anything out of this game. And I just think Liverpool, the way Liverpool are going at the moment, I know they lost in midweek, but, they were through after the first leg, really. I mean, they're probably saving their goals up for today. So I could see Liverpool winning this one, definitely.
They lost because Barry Ashworth was there moaning. Barry, he wasn't moaning on Twitter. He was at Anfield.
He's a jinx, that guy.
Speaking of midweek, Adrian, lovely pictures of you coming out. The Northeast Writers Awards that you were at, brilliant. And you were just saying off air that so special because it's the first time due to COVID that it's been back. Fantastic photo with you with the other Teesside celebrity, shall we say, Jeff Stelling and the mighty Laura Woods. Was it a good evening?
Well, there's two great dinners this week. Not that I'm at a dinner every night, I might add. There was the Northeast Writers on Sunday.
I'll argue that with you.
Northeast was Sunday evening, which was up in Durham, and that was where all the Northeast clubs were there and well attended by everybody, and it was fantastic. Special mention to Colin Young, the former Northeast journalist who put so much work into organising that. Great turnout, privileged to be there. Monday evening was the Sports Journalists Awards in London, where the main broadcast outlets and newspaper men and women won their special awards, and great broadcasters. Jeff Stelling of Hartlepool won a special lifetime achievement award, fully deserved. Laura Woods, who's absolutely flying at the moment, taking on the TalkSport breakfast show part of the week from where Alan Brazil was. Laura won a special award as well, but some brilliant journalists in the room. And I think it actually brings me back a little bit, without getting into politics, but what we're seeing at the moment with the coverage from Ukraine, when you see the bravery of the reporters who are on the ground right across that territory at the moment, and the importance of us receiving news of how it really takes place, you realise the importance of what top journalism really is all about. So admittedly, while it was the sports journalists in the room on Monday evening, it was a real privilege to be in the room with such, dedicated, professional, and real heavyweight talent who deservedly won a lot of achievements.
Brilliant. Some great names as well that were mentioned, but Jeff Stelling, of course, just even when a game finishes on a Saturday, and if I'm lucky enough to catch one on the TV, I'm literally like that with the control. As soon as the whistle's blown, I'm over, because it's an institution to see Jeff, who's literally firing through about 50 scores all at once whilst talking to his studio guests and, of course, engaging his audience. Sadly, it's coming to an end, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's going to be a real miss, because the generation of us, or a few generations who've grown up watching that, it's just been part of what Saturday is all about if you're not at a game. So it'll be fascinating to see what Jeff's next move is. But it's a major hole for Sky Sports to fill. You can't replace Jeff Stelling for what he's done in that job. It will be someone who has to do something with a very different twist, because Jeff is irreplaceable.
We've got a spare room, Kev. Uncle Jeff can come
He
and
can
move in
always
with
come
us.
onto the new platform. That's right. Come on, Jeff.
I've got his number if you want.
Brilliant. Kev, back on the football inside, I mentioned it at the top. Man United, Tottenham, absolutely huge game in the context of this, the so-called battle for the top four. And when I say who turns up today, I mean for either team, because talk about not putting a run together, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, and that goes for both sides, doesn't it?
Yeah, but both sides have been hit and miss at times. Although Spurs have won the last couple of games, obviously spanked Everton on Monday, and they're going to be feeling good about themselves after Manchester United's last game. Pete, let's be honest, against Manchester City, they've got to respond. They're going to be at home. Old Trafford's going to be full to the rafters, and they're playing against a team who are looking to really move into position to take their spot for the Champions League. So they're gonna have to put their fire out. Spurs are going to be thinking to themselves, we know this Manchester United side is going to give us opportunities. I think there's going to be goals in this one, Pete. I'm sure Ronaldo should be fit with a bit of luck, and he'll be looking to say, listen, I'm the main man here. Put me in the team and I'll take you where you need to go. So I think it's going to be
if he hasn't got off to Portugal.
Sorry?
That's if he hasn't got off to Portugal.
He'll get his private jet back. He'll be all right. Don't worry about that.
He can borrow yours, Kev, otherwise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all right, yeah.
Brilliant. Adrian, another team in the North that have a pivotal game today is Leeds. And I wanted to pick up on something that I was reading in the press. You were quoted just recently about the appointment of Jesse Marsch, but more so about his number two, who you know quite well, Mr. Toshak. What can you tell us about them as a pair, and what can we expect, or Leeds fans expect?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a difficult time for anyone going into Leeds just because of where they find themselves at the moment. And I don't think you can underestimate as well. Look, I think of all the teams down the bottom end of the table, they've been impacted most by key injuries. Losing Patrick Bamford, losing Calvin Phillips, losing one or two others for big chunks of the season when, they haven't got the biggest squad has had a real impact on them. And it probably would have impacted any side. Obviously, with the change that my good friend Andrea Andrettani, who I used to work with, has decided to make with Bielsa leaving, I think what they've done there, they've looked at Jesse Marsch, and they've tried to bring in a coach who would play with a similar type of attacking principles rather than rip it all up and start again. I don't know Jesse Marsch personally, but I do know Cameron Toshak, who is assistant, as you say, Pete. I spent quite a bit of time talking with him over the past year, and he's a really progressive guy. He's a very well-educated guy who's worked in the private sector as well as being someone in football in his life, son of John Toshak.
Yeah.
Did a really good job with Swansea under 23s with the various coaches that they've had. And in fact, he won the Premier League under 23 league with Swansea, went out to Cyprus on his own during COVID, and really improved the performances of Paphos, who he was coaching there, with a wide variety of international players, different languages to deal with, and did an effective job and improved the team massively. I can really see them trying to, take things forward with Leeds. I just think the challenge they've got is they've got a limited amount of time this season, and Leeds are in a dogfight. There's nobody can pretend otherwise. You've got Leeds, you've got Everton in there. Then you've got the teams already in the bottom three as well, and with Newcastle pulling away and Brentford getting that big win against Norwich, it is a real dogfight now for them. So look, I really hope for Andrea, who I worked with when he bought the club, and I think the Premier League benefits from having Leeds in the Premier League as well, and that's not to be dismissive of any of the clubs down the bottom there, but they took so long to get back in there. I think we've all enjoyed the football under Marcelo Bielsa. It would be great if Jesse Marsch, who had a tough time at Leipzig, but he inherited the team there from Nagelsmann, and Nagelsmann had changed the style a little bit that had gone on before that. This is all part of the whole Red Bull structure and the pressing style that Red Bull have always had at Salzburg and also at Leipzig. So Jesse is part of that mindset, and I think that's what he will try to still apply at Leeds. But obviously, they've got to stop shipping goals.
I was going to say, Kev, on Adrian's point there, do you think that the way Leeds have looked at it is with this new coach is that it's a similar aspect, a similar sort of DNA, but not quite as gun ho. He'd still like to press, but he's also going to have to be mindful, as Adrian says, of they can't continue to be letting 3 and 4 in every game.
Yeah, Pete, if you remember at the start of this season, we said now teams have played against Leeds.
Yeah,
teams can scheme against them and work them out. And that's what it seems like. I know they've had injuries, but even when the injuries were fit, they weren't ripping trees up this season because teams do their homework. They've got all the footage to watch, etc. So I think Jesse Marsch has come in with an eye on shoring up the defence. You have to shore that defence up a little bit more. We've seen them shore the defence up against Leicester, although they couldn't score and Leicester nicked one. But I thought Leeds were decent. Obviously got beat quite heavily in the week. So, again, this is one where it's against Norwich, who are bottom of the table. And you think to yourself, this is it, guys. We win this. We put some serious pressure on teams to win. But, you know, Norwich have got the best record against Leeds in the last 4 or 5 games, I think. Norwich have been unbelievable against them. So, you know, they've got to find it from somewhere.
I've got this feeling that it's not going to be, it's not that home banker that you look at. They've got a great coach in Origin, and Dean Smith he's invested something in them. They do have belief, and they just seem to be turning a corner only to face another tough fixture as of today. But I do fancy that they might get something out of that today. Staying with you, Kev, because if Leeds do with the results, Everton are in a whole world of trouble currently.
Pete, massive trouble Everton are in. And, you know, you look at squads, you look at Everton's squad and you think Everton shouldn't be anywhere near this position. The problem is they've had Rafa Benitez in, they've had different managers in, it's a cobble, a lot of the players have been cobbled together. But defensively, Pete, the Spurs game said it all, away from home especially. You cannot defend like that against a team like Spurs. You just can't. You've got to be able to read the play. You've got to be able to give yourself a chance and stay in the game. And Everton just got blown away. The game was over at half time. So there has to be a response, Pete. The manager, Frank Lampard's going to expect a response. The Goodison faithful going to expect a response. And I'm sure some of the criticism and flack that's been flying about, the players are going to want to respond and ram some of those hurtful comments down people's throat. And you know what? There's nothing better than getting the opportunity, Pete, to win the next game.
It's like we said on the Monday Rewind, Kev, when we were talking about it, that everything that goes off on the pitch, whether it be media, whether it be politics, is those players just itching to get on the pitch on Saturday, let their boots do the talking. Okay, it's been a full 23 minutes before I've mentioned Newcastle United, so I'm going to mention them. Another amazing win midweek Thursday night at Southampton, a place where they don't have a great record, but they just seem to be bouncing along really, really nicely. Kev, I'll start with the football side first because I want to ask Adrian a little bit about Dan Ashworth, someone who I know that he knows. But that goal from the new Brazilian, Bruno G, quite the goal, wasn't it? Quite the entry to make a debut.
Pete, listen, they like a little bit of samba in the tune, I believe. And that goal was special, wasn't it? I mean, Pete, he had no right to score from there. But, you know, just a swivel of the hips and a back heel, volley, back heel. What a way to win the game for Newcastle. Always a tough place to go down at Southampton. It's never easy down there. But, you know, Newcastle went there, got another 3 point, should I say, Pete. Yeah. And the Toon Army are bouncing. And by the way, Newcastle took a whole load of fans down there as well, you know, on a Thursday night. So fair play to the club, fair play to Eddie Howe, and fair play to everybody who is concerned because, you know, it's not been easy. They've had to fight and scrap, and they've got a great win.
3,500 were there, wasn't there?
Yeah, brilliant.
Well supported. Okay, Adrian, I wanted to ask you about Dan Ashworth, who's been linked strongly with Newcastle, of course. What do you know about him?
Well, I worked with Dan at the FA when he first joined the FA. Prior to that, he'd been at West Brom, and he'd done a really very good job at West Brom, working into Jeremy Peace with various managers like Tony Mowbray during the promotion period that they had. Dan is highly regarded, and we recruited him. Trevor Brooking and one or two others, including myself, brought him in, and he obviously came in ultimately as the technical director. And Dan he's a qualified coach. He's a really strategic thinking person who, he's very good with people, very clear-minded. He plans things. You see the way that Brighton have progressed while he's been in there. So he had success at, relatively speaking, at the FA with the way that the elite teams performed, winning tournaments, progression to the senior team performing much better at the highest level. Then with Brighton, they've got a clear playing philosophy there at Brighton and the way that they recruit players, which is part of that combination, which is culturally right, as Graham Potter, Paul Barber, and the chairman there with Dan. I think Dan will be a remarkable asset for Newcastle United moving forward. I think he'll be a huge help to the ownership group. I'm sure that the likes of Amanda Staveley will lean on Dan's knowledge of the game, both domestically and internationally. I think the academy will hugely benefit from it because Dan isn't always about thinking about what's happening at the top end of the club. He'll be building the foundations that will be in place for many years to come. And he'll also ensure that they're good in the way that they trade in the transfer market. Culturally, it'll be great support for Eddie Howe. I'm sure Eddie Howe, if it is Dan coming in, as we all expect it to be, Eddie Howe must have been sounded out about his thoughts on that as well, because they're going to have to work really closely together. And I can see real similarities between the way Eddie works and how Dan works. I think if I was a Newcastle fan, on the back of the current form, which I think is second in the Premier League form table at the moment, Newcastle look an exciting proposition on the pitch for the next years to come with everything that's going on around that club.
Absolutely. Kev, just to say that, just to follow on from it, Eddie Howe was named Manager of the Month. Well deserved. What a turnaround when you look at where it was a few months back on this show, where I could barely bring myself to even kick the show off. It was football. I was done with football, living vicariously through other people's teams. But all joking aside, him and his team, Jason Tyndall as well, what a job they've done.
Pete, look, when they first went in, there was a lot of people who were saying they should have got a more experienced manager. A lot of people were kind of downplaying Eddie Howe as if he weren't a good manager. Eddie Howe is a very, very, very good manager. He's young, but he's experienced. And look what he's done. He done with Bournemouth. I just think he needed that opportunity to go in. Obviously, he's only going to get the opportunity at Newcastle if Newcastle aren't doing well. So he goes in. Fair play to the new owners as well, appointing him. He goes in. He has a look at the squad. He assesses it. We've discussed it on this show, Pete. He's got to go into the transfer market, make the right signings, and then Newcastle will be all right. And he's done that. But not only that, Pete, he's improved the players that are already at the club. That's the sign of a good manager and a good coach. They've done a great job. And hey, look, manager of the month, probably team of the month. What is that? 5 wins and a draw in the last 6.
Yep.
It's incredible form. It's incredible form. So fair play to him. Fair play to him and his staff. It was nice to see when he got the award, he took a picture with all his backroom staff as well, because everyone's involved.
He's instilled something special and something that we'll continue to monitor. Okay, as we've said, we are moving to a new platform next week, so we do just want to remind you all that you do have to sign up. So it's a good time to have a quick commercial break.
Alan Saint-Maximin, and you're watching Georgie Pete on Hollywood Bowl in live. See you there.
Okay, sign up so that you're with us next week. Don't miss out, because what we're going to be able to do is we appreciate all of your messages that are coming in. We love that, and it's great to have you in the chat just down to next to me here, which I can see. A lot of all the normal names are in there. Paul Chimaubi's in, Arif's here as well, and it's great to have you all. But from next week, you won't just have to write. You can actually join in the show. So that's right. You can join in. You put your hands or raise your hand up if you've got a question for Kev or me or our guest, and we can access the show live with us and ask your questions. Because, Kev, we've got a lot of viewers who have got some seriously good points and knowledge of the game, and we want them to share it with us.
Yeah, Pete, not only share it, but we want to interact with them, because it's great that we see some of the chat. But to be able to interact where, we're on screen and we could get them in with us, I think it's quite a unique feature. So I'm looking forward to it, Pete. It's going to be fun.
It's a game changer, so to speak. Adrian, just with your Hartlepool hat on, you say that, things are going well. We've had that cup run. I wanted to point out as well that Crystal Palace on their social media said that they had never had a dressing room as tidy as what had happened after Hartlepool had finished. They said they thought it was cleaner than before they'd even gone in. Did you see that comment?
The players, but primarily Graham Lee, the manager, and the assistant Michael Nelson and Tony Sweeney, they're the guys who deserve the praise for that, because that's your cultural play. And I think a lot of that's taken from the All Blacks New Zealand rugby union team, sweeping the sheds out, as they call it in rugby, and a number of teams are doing that across sport now. But it gave us a great deal of pride within the boardroom afterwards, because that's not something that was engineered by the board saying to the manager, you need to do this. That's something that the players and the management, they take on, and it might seem a small thing to some people, but I just think that's about pride and standards, and what we've seen all the way through since Graham Lee and Michael Nelson have come in as the management team in unusual circumstances in the end of November. They've really applied that. So it was great pride, and that kind of just symbolised the fantastic day that it was at Crystal Palace with everything that they did for us.
Brilliant, great stuff, and a great cup run, and something that it will be memorable for the fans. Like you say, I don't care about this, people saying that the FA Cup's not what it was. You can't beat the magic of the cup. Kev, staying with Crystal Palace, Man City go there for the Monday night game. Absolutely great game. We look at it more as a preview on Monday in our Monday Rewind show. But City won't fancy it, because currently Crystal Palace could be the only side with the possibility of doing the double over the Blues.
Yeah, it's quite a weird one, because Crystal Palace at the Etihad tend to beat Manchester City, and Manchester City in the reverse tend to beat Crystal Palace down there. But I tell you this much, Pete: if Liverpool get the 3 points, then it puts huge pressure on Manchester City to win this game, because they want to keep that 6-point gap. But Crystal Palace are a tough side. They're not easy by any stretch. But I think them being at home will suit Manchester City, because they're going to have to attack them. So Manchester City could maybe cut through them. But it's going to be a hell of a tussle.
It is. And as we said at the start of the show, top of the hour, not just issues at the bottom, but there's a lot riding on. We thought a couple of weeks back that it was City's to lose, possibly still is, but it's a lot closer than people think. So it's exciting at both ends. Adrian, I wanted to come back to you with your experienced hat on at so many levels, and go back to international football. I wanted to ask you about the World Cup. Given your fantastic experience, you've guided England along to so many major tournaments, by the way. What are your thoughts on the upcoming World Cup and the so many new facets and changes that this tournament's going to bring?
Look, there's a much broader debate that's been going on for many years about the World Cup being in Qatar, and then beyond that, the World Cup being held in the winter, insofar as Northern Hemisphere. My mindset to this has been very straightforward. I try to keep it very straightforward. I think it's going to be a fantastic World Cup, and I say that if you're a participating team, From an operational point of view, you're going to be playing in amazing stadiums. You're not going to be hit with a lot of the travelling problems that certainly we encountered in days gone by, travelling all the way around Brazil or travelling around South Africa, the size of the country. I think, from a hotel and training ground facilities, they will be brilliant. I'm sure the likes of Gareth Southgate with England will not be having some of the challenges that we've previously faced with other managers when we've taken teams away. So I think that alleviates a lot of the problems. I also don't think the temperature is going to, you'll know this better than me, Pete, but I don't think the temperature is going to be a big problem at that time of year. The World Cup in Germany, of all the World Cups I worked at, was actually the most difficult from a temperature and humidity point of view, bizarrely. So I think it will be an incredible spectacle, and I just hope that the quality of football is played to the level that we believe it can be. And there's some great teams out there at the moment who should make it an exciting tournament.
And speaking from a purely selfish perspective, it's on my back door, so I'm looking forward to it for one. Lots of goals. Kev, speaking of goals, as a forward, you yourself know can be a bit lonely up top sometimes when it's not going your way. A lad out of sorts at the moment is Marcus Rashford. What's going on there?
Pete, I think Marcus Rashford is a little bit of a victim of the regime change at Old Trafford. You look at his goal output and his assists over the last 3 seasons, he's been fine. But this season, obviously, he suffered a bit of injury as well, a loss of form, and then that they seem to have lost a little bit of culture from their dressing room. Adrian mentioned about Hartlepool having that good culture in the club. When you've got a good culture, it goes from the top down and from the bottom up. But at Manchester United, it seems so disjointed. He's still a young player, Pete, who's very talented. He's not even getting on the pitch sometimes, and then he's getting on the pitch. He got on, what was it, last week, with 10 minutes to go or something like that? What's he supposed to do? I just think Manchester United seem to be disjointed completely. The dressing room, for me, doesn't seem together, and it manifests itself in loss of form, and that's what's happened to him, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm going to stay with you, Kev, because it's that time again. Baller of the week. Have you got a hero for us from the last 7 days?
Pete, it's easy, and it's not Barry Ashworth. I could tell you that much. Pete, I've got to say, Karim Benzema, for Real Madrid was just incredible. I mean, that hat trick to take the game away after. It would have been Mbappe. You could imagine Mbappe was unbelievable in both games, really. But I've got to give it to Karim Benzema, Pete. He was sensational.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Although I did think when you said there can only be one, I thought it was going to be Eddie Howe. But, mate, there's always time for
that's
the
yours.
baller of the week for Eddie. Adrian, have you got a baller, a hero from the last 7 days for us?
Well, it probably wasn't catching as many eyeball views on TV as Karim Benzema, but I've got to say there was a goal scored by our own Luke Molyneux for Hartlepool last week at Harrogate last Saturday lunchtime, and you won't see too many better goals than that this season. And he scored 2 or 3 very similar, where he takes it in from the right-hand side, turns onto his left and shapes it out beyond the post and hit the top corner. Great goal. So my man's Luke Molyneux.
Great stuff. And as Kevin just said as well, Adrian, he's hit the nail on the head, and it's something that's happening at Newcastle through the DNA of the club. But it's a feel-good factor at Hartlepool at the moment, isn't it? And that's sort of the knock-on effect from on the pitch to so many thousands going to watch them as well.
Yeah, and look, it's not just about Hartlepool. What Kevin said there, I think, is absolutely spot on. You mentioned something earlier, Kevin, about Everton, and I know it's close to your heart. And I look at Everton as a football club, which is a great football club. And I think they are, unfortunately suffering because of so many changes over the past 7 or 8 years. And, I think you said, Kev, a squad that's been cobbled together by several different managers with different philosophies. And I know we can get caught up in buzzwords in football about strategies and philosophies. We want to keep it simple about the basic principles, but ultimately you need to have a plan. And that doesn't mean that a manager can't be changed, because sometimes it just doesn't work with a manager for whatever reason. But you've got to get your recruitment right, and you've got to have a basic style of play that you want to try and adhere to. and some basic parameters in how you recruit. And if you get those basic principles right, and then the cultural piece by signing players who fit what your club's all about, and people at the top of the club having a clear vision for what they want to achieve with your team, you've got a much better chance of achieving it. And I feel for Frank Lampard at Everton now. He's picking up this. None of this is his doing, not that it's any individual's whole responsibility, but it's very difficult to change things now, at this stage of the game with so little of the season remaining. But the piece about any sporting organisation, we talked about the All Blacks earlier with New Zealand. Great sporting teams have great sporting cultures, and they have good people who show real leadership at the key moments.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Brilliant. Okay, so it's time. It's that time of the week, Kev's favourite time of the week. And you'll all be glad to know that, of course, it's moving to the new platform with us. I just spoke to Mr. Danny Kwang himself this morning to make sure that his hot sauce bags were all packed and ready for the new platform. They are indeed. But before we do, obviously, as I said, Kev, Barry Ashworth, your nemesis on this competition, was playing in my beloved City last night, and he sent me this for you.
So, Geordie P, Super Kevin Campbell. I've just been asked, who is number one, me or Super Kev? Are you kidding me? There is only number one. He is number one. There you go. Top dog, number one. Super Kevin Campbell. Nah, Mr. Barry Ashworth.
I think Kev, who's got...
Pete, he's got it all wrong, Pete. There's only one Kevin Campbell who's number one. Barry Ashworth could get all his pals in to fluff him up, but I'm the main man. Nice one, Barry. All the best. And I'm sure you absolutely turned Newcastle upside down last night. All the best.
I believe he did, Kev. That was Paul Jerry there, nonetheless, who's off to Sunderland today. And Barry was invited to go to the Stadium of Light for the game. He was going to be Paul's guest, but he had to politely decline because he was off to Lincoln because the band are playing there tonight. Lincoln or Sunderland, there's only one choice, but I'm not going to get drawn into that. Okay, let's get on to it. So last week's winner was everyone, basically, because no one got an actual correct score, Kev. So there was about 3 or 4 of us all on 5 points. So all winners in my eyes, I believe. Okay, on to today. Great stuff. Got some cracking games this weekend, and it's guests first. But a rundown in the house. Andrew Burgess, Everton fan, is back. Haven't seen him for a while. Of course, Barry Ashworth's in. Samantha's here as well. Darren and Charlotte. Great to have Charlotte as well, our guest on the show just a couple of weeks back. Okay, we're going to start guests first. Brighton, Liverpool, Adrian, what you got for us?
Brighton, I don't think they're in great form, so I'm going to go Brighton 0, Liverpool 3.
Okay, super Kev.
I've got 2-0 to Liverpool. Pete.
Okay, so have I. Andrew Burgess has got 4-1 to Liverpool. Barry Ashworth's got 2-1 to Liverpool. Samantha's gone 3-0 to Liverpool. Darren's taken 2-0 to the Redmen. And Charlotte has taken 3-1 to Liverpool as well. Okay, next up for Adrian, it's Man United Spurs. Crucial game.
Very difficult one to call. Who can call Man United at the moment? The Spurs are very hit and miss as well. Really attractive game, always this one. I'm going Man United 1, Tottenham 1.
Okay, Kev.
I'm going to go 2-2 this one. I think there's going to be plenty of goals. And for Arsenal's sake, we need them to both cancel each other out. So brilliant. 2 each.
Good stuff. I've got 1-1 as well. Andrew Burgess has taken 0-0. Barry Ashworth's taken 1-0 to Spurs. Samantha's taken 2-1 to Spurs. Darren's taken 1-1. And Charlotte's taken 2-0 to Spurs. Okay, back up to Adrian. We've got Everton Wolves.
Blimey, how can you call this? Poor Frank. Everton 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 1.
Okay, super Kev, your old boys.
They've got to respond, Pete. So, listen, they've been a lot better at home. I'm going 2-1 Everton.
Okay, I've got 1-0 to Everton. Sorry, Blues. Andrew Burgess has taken 2-0 to Everton. Barry Ashworth's taken 1-0 to Wolves. Samantha's gone for a 0-0 draw. Darren's taken 2-1 to Everton. And Charlotte's taken 2-1 to Everton as well. Okay, humdinger at the bottom. It's Leeds Norwich, Adrian.
Leeds United, got to find some form. Due a win. First win for Jesse March. I agree Dean Smith's a really good manager. I think it might be a step too far. I'm going to go Leeds 2, Norwich 1.
Okay, Super Kev.
I've got it the other way. I've got Leeds losing 2-1 to Norwich.
Okay. I've got Leeds 3, Norwich 1. Andrew Burgess has gone 1-0 to Norwich. So has Barry Ashworth. Samantha's taken 1-0 to Leeds. Darren's taken 2-0 to Leeds. And Charlotte's taken 1-0 to Leeds as well. Last up, game of the weekend for us is West Ham Villa, Adrian.
It's a tricky one because West Ham, having played that game in Sevilla the other night, travelling back. And Villa are in good form as well. I have a sneaking feeling Villa might do this one. And I'm going to go West Ham 1, Villa 2.
Okay, Super Kev.
I've got the same, Pete, 2-1 Villa.
Okay, I've gone for a 1-1 draw. Andrew Burgess has gone 2-1 to West Ham. Barry Ashworth's taken 1-0 to West Ham. 2-1 to West Ham for Samantha. 2-2 for Darren. And Charlotte's taken 2-1 to the Villa. So we will keep you all posted. Okay, that's about it for another brilliant edition. Last edition on the old home. We'll pack the bags and we'll be with you. Same time, by the way, next week, but in our new gaff.
We're moving out, Pete. We're moving out.
out.
Moving on up.
Adrian, it's been an absolute pleasure. We can't wait to welcome you onto the new platform.
I'm looking forward to it, guys. The invite, the expectations building here already.
And we'll have to have a housewarming because Adrian, he loves a good steak and a bottle of wine, Kev. So we'll have to prepare something nice.
Yeah, we'll have to get Galston to sorting something out.
Yeah, there's a good shout as well. Yeah, we can work on that. We'll do that. Okay, listen, have a great weekend, everyone. Adrian, thanks once again for being our guest. Brilliant stuff. Kev, we'll see you on Monday. Rewind, of course, ahead of our big move next Friday. Whoever your team is, have a great weekend. Hope you get 3 points. And we'll see you next week. This is me, Geordie Pete Reddin, saying goodbye.